Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Joe Naz Podcast. And today we have an amazing guest. His name is Jay Spall. He's the brother of somebody I had a couple episodes again, a Spall. And Jay is a biochemist, and he is working on new gene therapies, which are essentially helping to promote multiple functions within the body. And so a lot of us take supplements and we take peptides and we take different medications to trigger responses in the body. And those responses are typically the proteins that are making these things happen. He explains how the functions in the body and how these proteins make certain things happen and how the gene therapy product that they've created triggers these responses. And this is going to be the future where you're going to be able to go in, you're going to be able to get an injection that lasts 1 or 2 years and your body is working in an optimal and functional way that you desire. I'm really excited to bring this conversation forward because Jay really explains a lot of the details that I was missing in understanding how supplements and how peptides work within the body, and he explains it in a very layman's terms that you can understand. So if you're interested in biohacking, if you're interested in hearing about the future and how our health can be improved and the ways and the modalities to do that, then you should definitely tune in. This is going to be an amazing episode. Let's go. Our sponsor of the podcast and our only sponsor of the podcast is Total Bottle. Total Bottle is an amazing product that I am actually part owner in the company myself. This is something that me and a couple friends came up with and invented. So what is Total Bottle? Total Bottle is a product that has a plate, it has a cup, and it has a spork all in one. So I'm going to show you guys how it works. It's very simple. You button these 4 corners of this plate that wraps around the outside, and you have a bowl. And you then have a cup that comes off the bottom, which literally a simple screw, and you have your cup. And then inside of that, there is a compartment in here that holds a foldable spork that can be pulled out and used. Now, why was this created? This was created because in this world, we have a lot of single-use plastics that are being used on a daily basis, and this is our way of helping the planet slow down on its plastic use. Basically all these utensils which are just causing more damage than they are helping. So if you have one of these Total Bottles, you can use it in everyday life. You can use it at the gym. You can use it at festivals, Burning Man, whatever you really desire. And camping, this is a great tool so you can have to carry less and have everything in one compact place. If you're looking to purchase one of these, you can purchase it on totalbottle.com, and we'd be happy to get your support. We plan on donating part of our profits to helping the planet to clean up things in the ocean and to clean up the forests and to do our best to contribute and help any way we can. So once again, totalbottle.com. I hope you enjoy this product. It has changed my life and I've loved bringing it to life, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. Hello, everybody, and welcome on back. Today we have Jay Spall here. We had the pleasure of interviewing his brother a couple weeks ago, and it was an absolutely amazing interview, and I'm really excited to have Jay sit down and have a conversation with him today. He's on the forefront of science, and he's helping people to optimize their lives and improve their health in a myriad of different ways. And I'm really excited to drop in with him today. We're going to be talking about a range of different topics. So Jay, thank you so much for coming down today.
Thank you very much, Joe. Great pleasure to be here with you. I saw some of your previous podcasts. Very excited for our personalities to mesh today.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm super stoked. For those of you that don't know Jay, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of an intro about him, and then I'm, of course, going to let Jay tell his story so that everybody can hear how his journey has been to get where he is today. So Jay is the Chief Revenue Officer, Visionary in Health and Wellness Innovation at Minicircle, a pioneering gene therapy company at the forefront of modern healthcare innovation. With over 15 years of experience in health and wellness, Jay focuses on scaling Minicircle's operations, expanding its global reach, and fostering strategic partnerships to deliver cutting-edge therapies that improve lives. At Minicircle, Jay's leadership encompasses driving growth initiatives, ensuring compliance, and enhancing the overall customer experience. His ability to translate complex science into impactful business strategies has made him a vital force in advancing gene therapy and health optimization on a global scale. In addition to his current role, Jay has been actively involved in various ventures in the health and wellness space, including working with peptides, consulting for clinics to advance innovative therapeutic solutions, and early in his career, Jay played a key role in development of groundbreaking health products ranging from ready-to-drink functional beverages to advanced transdermals and topicals. I'm excited to actually hear about that. These contributions reflect his deep expertise and passion for advancing for health and wellness technology. technologies. Jay's blend of biochemistry expertise and business acumen positions him as a thought leader in the rapidly evolving fields of gene therapy and health innovation. He is dedicated to making advanced therapies accessible and understandable, bridging the gap between science and everyday health. So that's quite of an introduction, and there's a lot of different topics in there. So I'm excited to kind of break them down one at a time and to really get into what are the nuances of what you're doing and how you're able to help people through all these different modalities. So I wanted to hear just, how did you end up getting into this space and where did that journey start?
Absolutely. I'm a pretty firm believer. It seems to be a very common parallel in health sector, but mostly every sector, that a lot of the innovation is coming from N of one. People's own personal voids are what's creating and leading to a lot of this innovation. And essentially the same thing happened to me. I was when
you say N of one, what does that mean?
N is sample size, right? Like how many subjects there are, and N of one is commonly used term in science, like when it's subject of one.
Okay.
So I'm the one subject. I'm having the following said problem, and because I'm having that problem, I'm now finding a solution. And when I find the solution, now it becomes like a broad market product or a solution for people.
Okay.
That's what I mean by that, yeah.
Okay, very cool.
And if you have like 100 people in a study, that would be N of 100.
100,
Yeah.
okay, very cool.
When I was young, I had a back injury in Pakistan. Came to the U.S. at the age of 12, and at a young age ended up having surgery. A very major surgery on my lower back. And this is, it's probably a fun subject for you to actually hear about, because this is right before the opioid awareness around the opioid crisis and epidemic. The epidemic was in full throttle. But at a young age, once I had the surgery, I got put on opioids, more specifically fentanyl. Wow. And for over a decade of my life, I was on opioids, prescription, that doctors gave me. And what typically happens in these cases, and I'm very, very...
How old were you?
I was 16.
16.
I was 16, yeah.
That's wild.
And I'm very deeply grateful for this journey, because most of the people that I know that went through this did not actually survive. But what happens when you get put on these opioids at a very young age, things just start, failing one by one. Yeah. Now the doctors are a lot more cognizant of this and aware of this, but you get put on opioids, the next thing you know is like you have depression because of the opioids, but you don't know where it's coming from. You go to the doc, they give you SSRIs, and then, you're like, oh, my sleep is now disrupted, and they give you sleep medication, Ambien, Lunesta, right? Yeah. And you're like, I'm having anxiety in school now. Yeah. Well, let's give you Valium now. Well, with all these things now, I'm not able to stay awake or don't have energy. Well, let's write you a prescription for a methamphetamine, right? A methylphenidate or Ritalin or something. So before you know it, things are out of control. And that's essentially what happened to me. A decade had passed by, actually more like 15 years had passed by, and everything in my body was just one by one failing. And I became a diabetic. I was relatively immobile. And all that led into a very deep, dark, it was a very dark period of my life. Yeah. I had essentially given up hope that I'm not going to survive. In fact, that's what I was being told by the doctors that I was working with, that, this is looking rough. You're not going to be able to get off the opioids. The critical turning point for my story is my sister was pregnant and my nephew was being born. Yeah. And around the same time, she's in New Jersey, I was in Vegas for business, and I had some very severe pain in my abdomen. Called my sister. She's like 2-3 days before birth. Okay. And she's like, don't even call 911, get an Uber or a taxi, go to the ER. Yeah. I got admitted to the ICU, and I died there. I let go. I was like, in my head, the story was, I'm the leaf that falls, and my nephew is going to be the new one that sprouts. Lo and behold, I came back to life and called my father, found out that my nephew was healthy, alive, and I was also alive. Something in that moment was so powerful that clicked in my head that, oh, it is not my time. That was a false belief that I had. So I signed a document at hospital to basically let me, against medical advice, to let me go. And I made a very conscious decision that I'm going to solve my health problems one by one myself now. I will work with doctors, but I'm now the head coach of my health. And that's where it all started. Within, after the podcast, I will happy to share some before and after photos with you.
Yeah.
I was 350 pounds in December 2018.
Jesus.
And I lost 100 pounds in less than 6 months.
That's amazing.
By June 2019, I had gone through a full transformation. And this is the part of the story where I actually created a process for me from all sorts of different modalities, interventional IVs with NAD, to help me get off the opioids, how I got off the fentanyl, how I detoxed from all the benzos. So it was a step-by-step process.
100%.
Yeah, that was the initiation.
Got it. Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
First is your back injury. What was your back injury?
Some accident that happened when I was very young. It was actually a little bit of an abuse case that happened.
Okay.
And it was a herniated discs. We're all too familiar with, L4, L5,
100%.
S1 herniation.
Yeah, I mean, in my field, is something I deal with.
Yeah. I suspected.
Got it.
Comes across your table
and
a lot.
so you had like a bulging disc and you were just in consistent chronic pain all the time.
Yes.
And instead of treating it and getting you chiropractic and physical therapy, they decided to put you on fentanyl at a young age, which just treat the symptom and it didn't actually help to solve the problem. Yeah, I understand this. It's something that in my practice, I don't usually recommend to my clients ever that they take the pain pills that the doctors give them. I recommend that they do the treatments and they heal the natural way. But of course, some people are in so much pain that they usually go down that route. And then the second question I had for you is, when you went to the hospital that day and you felt that you died, what exactly was the issue? And can you, if you don't mind, go into a little bit more? Yeah, I want to hear what you mean by like you died. Did your heart stop, or what happened? Or was it an emotional death, an ego death, or did you actually die on the table?
Yeah, it was essentially all of it. But what the root cause for that period was pancreatitis. A lot of times it's your gauge on how good your pancreas is done via, it's a simple test they do called a lipase test. To check your lipase level. Your lipase levels are supposed to be between 25 and 50, and my lipase levels were above 750. So that's a major risk. That means you're like about to explode, So that was the cause of that time. They could not figure out why I had that, because typically people get it from alcohol, or it could be genetic. But I knew what was happening. I knew I was overweight. I'd been on all these very intensely strong medications for so long, and everything one by one was failing. And when I talk about death, I literally faded away, and they brought me back.
Wow. And what was that experience like when you faded away? Was it just complete darkness, or did you see something on the other side?
Very good question, because a lot of people talk about the light. I did not see any light, but I do believe that I experienced, there's some theories around this, that the time when the brain experiences a naturally large surge of dimethyltryptamine, one is when they're sleeping, or one is right when you are about to die, or your brain knows that you're about to die, right?
Yeah.
So I do believe I experienced that, because I had this moment, which was a moment for me, but it felt like a very long time. And during this moment, what I experienced was a flash of my life, and more specifically around love. And for me, that was, who have I loved? Who do I love, and who loves me? And I came to a pretty strong realization that I haven't loved anyone other than like my main immediate family for over a decade. During this like journey, I basically slowly, completely shut down. But yeah, that was a glimpse into that moment of dying.
So interesting. So you were basically recounting the people that you had poured your love into and the people that had poured love into you. And I guess what I'm hearing is, it sounds like you were almost a little bit disappointed that you didn't have an opportunity to pour more love into others.
Yeah, or receive too. Like it just felt like, oh my God, this is something greatly has been absent for the large part in my life.
Got it. And then you mentioned the word dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah.
Because is that essentially an acronym for DMT?
Correct.
Yeah, I got it.
Yes.
And so that's what people are referring to when they're maybe using that that drug, that specific chemical to like smoke it or to use it in different things. But it's also something that's just released, I've heard, when you die and when you're born and also when you're in your dreams. Is that correct?
That is correct. Dimethyltryptamine exists in one form or another in so many living things, animals and plants. So it is a very natural component that is part of a huge portion of the biochemistry in at least our planet that we know of.
Gotcha. And so when it comes to that experience, it sounds like you basically realize you've been doing things incorrectly and it was time to take charge of your life. Mm-hmm. And so you said that you created a process, or you created a way for you to get out of it. And what was that process like? Did you you obviously didn't go cold turkey, because going cold turkey on those things can kill you, from what I've heard.
Yes.
Yeah. And were you having withdrawals, or what was that like?
That was a very, very brutal process. Absolutely a process that I do not wish upon anybody else. So what I did was I had the insurance I had at that time. I'm going to leave the names out of it of some of these companies because I don't want to badmouth anybody.
Yeah.
I went to this insurance company and my healthcare, and I asked them that I don't want to be on these medications anymore. It's a decision.
Yeah.
And they did not support me. They said, you will die. So let's put you on MMT, methadone maintenance program, which you may be familiar with.
I'm not. What is
methadone maintenance program is it's almost like a form of rehab. Methadone is an opioid.
Yeah.
Okay. Some physicians and scientists are pretty well aware that it may even have more side effects than the original opioid that you were on.
Yeah.
But MMT is a program that they put you on to get you off the fentanyl or or narcotics like heroin, blah blah blah. So now they put you on methadone maintenance, and you're given this pill, and you just keep going to the clinic and getting it. By that point, I had done enough research into the subject, and I was like, well, I'm not basically signing up for a new problem. I'm not replacing the problems, right? And that one could be a bigger problem. So they gave me that option, and then basically closed the door. So the most brutal part of it was me getting off the opioid. So I had some savings. I did well in my career, even through all of this. I was consulting and had an array of doing product development for companies. So I was doing okay. So I had a 25 grand cash saved.
Yeah.
And I just grabbed all of it, and I found a doctor, an outpatient doctor who was helping people with these, did some research, went to go see him. And this is a part I'm skeptical of sharing in public, but I'm going to share it here anyways.
Yeah.
So this doctor, I had some history with him. He knew that I was a scientist. And he said to me that, Jay, getting you off of fentanyl is going to be very rough.
Yeah.
I'd way rather have you, if you came to me that you were using heroin from the streets, you would have an easier time getting off of that than fentanyl.
I've heard that, though.
He's like, fentanyl is about 100 times more potent than heroin. Also, I was thinking about mentioning this to you previously because there's one thing a lot of people are not actually aware of around fentanyl. When somebody is using opioids, whether prescription or whether recreationally on the street, addiction, you're getting them in pulses. Like you're taking the pill or you're smoking it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
What happens with prescription fentanyl, it's very dangerous. You're basically given a patch. That's the delivery method. So you put the patch on wherever, right? And now you're getting a steady supply of this said opioid delivered into your bloodstream throughout. And then the patch runs out in 48, 72 hours. And guess what do? You put on your next patch. Yeah. So this is a lot rougher on the individual because, you're never getting a break from it, right? Yeah. So you're, I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, chasing the dragon. That essentially comes from, it's an opioid saying. What happens is with opioids, your tolerance develops so quickly that you constantly need to keep redosing at a higher and higher dose for it to alleviate your pain. So somebody who's put on opioids indefinitely or for years, they're essentially in a constant state of withdrawal. They're never, it's like just enough to make them functional with their day, but it's never actually alleviating the problem, right?
Okay.
So this is something people are very unaware of.
Yeah. Okay. So you have a history in biochemistry. So actually, this is a question that I've always just been interested in. So can you explain to me chemically and maybe neurologically also what's happening in the brain when somebody has an opioid addiction? What is causing those withdrawals? What is happening inside of you that maybe your body stops making something, or maybe it needs something else? What exactly is happening?
Yeah. So really, really good question. Firstly, I think I can give you a breakdown in a way that's going to be very digestible for just about anybody.
Yeah.
So whenever a human is ingesting compounds, you're essentially having a neurotransmitter response in the brain at the end of the day, one way or another. You're getting either dopamine release, either norepinephrine release, or either a serotonin release. And this could happen with an array of different mechanisms, right? Sometimes it blocks a receptor somewhere, and now that leads to more serotonin. Sometimes it's similar looking to serotonin, so it gives you more serotonin, right? So at one level, that's what's happening when you are ingesting an opioid. You are getting a surge of serotonin and dopamine, so it feels like a warm hug to you, right? Because you're basically brain has gone into like a happy state, right?
Yeah.
So the receptors that it binds to in the brain, I'm not going to get too deep into science, but 5-HT1/2 receptors, binds to these receptors in the brain. What happens when you start ingesting opioids is your brain gets satisfied, but then it starts making more sites essentially that now need to be satisfied. So that's why you consistently need more and more of a dose.
Why does it make more sites, or how does it do that?
This is just the process. I don't know if I can shed so much light on it, on why it does that, but that's just how it works. This is why it's very common to see drug addicts where they're consuming a dose that will kill like 50 people if they've never used this said drug, but they're fine with it, right? It's because the brain just now it has more sites that it needs to be satisfied. So at a very layman scientific process, this is what's happening. It's binding to the sites that's giving you more surge of these neurotransmitters that make you that give you this feeling of happiness or completion or warmth. And for people with PTSD, a lot of times it makes those people more functional because now it has alleviated a level of their anxiety.
Okay, so interesting. So from what I understand, it sounds like you take the pill. It's essentially releasing dopamine, serotonin, or norepinephrine, which are all different chemicals in the brain to make you feel warm, or as you called it, a warm hug, because I definitely have taken those after surgeries. And when you're in that state, you're saying that new sites are created within the brain, or is that correct?
There's more and more sites that need to be satisfied.
Got it. Okay,
right?
so more and more sites need to be satisfied.
Yes.
And so then it needs more and more of that drug. And so it creates this cycle that you literally have to be taking more and more and more to just feel what it sounds like is normal.
Yes.
Yeah, and just
for you to feel normal. You nailed it.
Like status baseline, just normal, because whatever's happening with this drug, it's like depleting other sites of this dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, and you just have to keep taking more to get to this baseline.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. And so when you stop taking it, you essentially, I guess my question is, when you stop taking an opioid, does your brain just like have trouble functioning to a normal baseline, and that's why you're having trouble functioning? Or does that normal baseline with these chemicals affect your organs and different functions throughout the body too?
Yeah, but pretty much everything gets impacted, right? If you stop cold turkey, you have a very high probability of dying. So you have to be tapered off, and most likely, your question is perfect actually, because your mental state, your autonomic system in your body is dictating a lot of these functions. So your heart gets, and that's why you can seize and die, because everything, your heart, your liver, all these things are getting a signal to operate in a certain way.
Yeah.
So that gets deeply impacted. So that's why you have to be put, a lot of times these centers will put you on blood pressure medication, on a variety of medications to kind of keep you centered and keep these functions running when you get off of these items.
Okay. So then I guess to kind of just like confirm that I understand. So it sounds like you're taking the drug. The drug then, you need this drug to be happy and for your brain to function normally and to just be at homeostasis.
Yep.
And so the more and the longer you take the drug, the harder it becomes to get off of it, because the moment you stop taking this drug, your brain then is so dependent on it that for your brain to function normally, and because your brain controls everything, for it to function normally, it affects your organs, it affects everything physically. And so if you stop cold turkey, it literally could stop your heart or cause a myriad of other problems, because it's so dependent on this just to get to a normal baseline.
Yes, correct. And I think this is a good time to squeeze in a disclaimer from my side that I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a physician or a practitioner. I'm a scientist of sorts, right? I'm a biochemist, chemist. That's what my background is. And this information is my personal experience. It's more for educational and entertainment, right?
Yeah.
But don't take this as advice. Always work with your doctor if anybody's listening who's going through some of their own journey. Maybe look at this as inspiration, but not actual medical advice.
Of course, yeah. And none of this is meant to be taken as medical advice. It's more just for people to understand, what is going on within the body. And you're obviously speaking from your own experience. You're not telling anyone that they should go do it this way. But I do respect that, especially being an attorney. Sometimes you have to give disclaimers, let people know this is not legal advice. Go consult somebody if you want to speak to an actual lawyer. But I appreciate that. And so I guess in your journey, when you were weaning off of all these medications, because it sounds like there was a myriad of them, did you have the help of this medical professional that assisted you in weaning off of it, or did you have to just do your own research, or how did you find out what you needed to allow you to wean off the proper way for your journey?
Yeah. So this physician, I'm very grateful. He has since passed away. He had cancer, but a lot of gratitude to him that he was very honest with me. He told me, Jay, the part where we left off, he's like, if you were on heroin, this would be easier. And he said, I legally cannot give you this advice to get on heroin, but I know you personally. I know how gifted of a scientist you are. Is there a way you can figure out how to get on heroin instead of fentanyl? This was a tough week for me. It took me about a week to sort this out because I'm not, I'm an academic and, in the business world, this is not my realm to go by heroin. Well, I made some calls. I sorted this out. It was very tough for me at that time, but I procured a supply of it. This is many years ago now. And I purified it. So I tested it, ran it through a machine, a high precision liquid chromatography machine.
Yeah.
Figured out what the purity was, I don't even remember the protocol or design at the time, purified it, and basically made small vape cartridges to get off of this harsh prescription patch onto that. So I basically tapered myself off. But an interesting part of this is like, I think this section of the podcast is like, opioid education, like a line of sight into a scientist who's actually living it, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing that happened during this week that I tapered myself off, because I was on fentanyl for over a decade, prescription fentanyl, I actually never had enough, right?
Yeah.
But now I was in charge of my own dosing. So during this week is when I tapered myself off, and when I actually did an exuberant amount of research I was reading PubMed, I was reading books, I was glancing through most of the stuff to find the things that resonated very well with me.
Yeah.
And when I found the thing that resonated or that sparked my interest, then I would go deep into it. Yeah. So from January 2nd to January 8th, I basically tapered myself off. But because I was in charge of the dose, I was able to dose myself where I was actually free for a little bit from the pain. Right.
How wild.
So during this week.
This is so cool. But obviously, this is just so insane because you are a biochemist. Like you can take something like narcotics off the street and you can literally find ways to make them cleaner and pure, and you could dose yourself. I guess just quick question is, why didn't, when you were weaning off of it, why didn't that doctor, couldn't he just prescribe you a weaker dose?
He was not in the business of prescribing and tapering people off. The way, this is the system here. The way the system is structured is these rehabs, right? There's like this is a big business there. You know, you got celebrity rehabs, you got outpatient doctors. They don't usually prescribe you any opioids. And also one other thing to account for, the technology now compared to then has drastically advanced now. This is not something, God forbid, you know, anybody has to go through this now, or I'm never going to have to go through this now. But let's just say if we fast forwarded a little bit to if I was going through that now, I probably would not have to do that because of all the interesting injectables or analogs that the doctor could have injected me with to basically overtake that process. But at that time, I'm referring to naltrexone, you know, a variety of different naltrexones that are available that the doctor can kind of give you to satisfy those receptors in your brain to help ease the pain. This wasn't very readily available at that time.
Got it. So you're saying that now there's medications that you can take that basically will satisfy what your brain is looking for, which is a signal that everything's okay. And it will basically help to create a bypass of that circuit to allow you to function normally when you're not getting that painkiller.
Yes. Correct.
Okay, or that opioid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
How cool. Yeah, I didn't even know that there was stuff like that now. And that's obviously something that's happened in the last couple decades.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
How cool. Okay, and so you were tapering off of this. And so fentanyl was obviously the most severe of what you were taking. With the rest of the medications and stuff, were you able to wean off of them pretty easily once you started solving the pain problem and the main issue? No, it wasn't very easy. Some of the medications took months. Some of them, frankly, took years. One of the opioids have gotten a great deal of attention. I mean, we spent so long talking about them, right? One of the medications that hasn't gotten much attention is benzos. Benzos, for listeners, is Xanax, Valium, Ativan. That's the benzo category. And benzos are brutal. Benzos will give you, for some individuals, you can have withdrawals for years. And the withdrawals are very rough for benzos. I think it's Jordan Peterson who had a pretty interesting journey on benzos. There are online communities called Benzo Buddies, where people support each other through that process. So yeah, it was some things took weeks, other things took months, and some things took years to recover from. And I had to go pretty deep into what is my process for each one of them. But I think the interesting component where we were in the story is what was my plan for that year to get healthy. At the baseline, it was to get off everything, right? All the very harsh pharmaceuticals. But what was my approach to losing the weight and getting healthy? And the number one thing that I kept stumbling upon over and over was nutrition. And what specifically nutrition? I came across this very interesting story. It was a blog, maybe an article. I don't even have it saved, about where there are these populations in the world, like such as Ayurvedic people, where, they sometimes won't kill a certain plant because they're like, this plant has too many feelings. So they're very don't want to be hurtful, right? Very respectful of life. When an individual in their village or tribe would get sick or deal with a certain ailment, what they would do is they would kill an animal and actually feed them the saturated fat and the organs because, this is to save another life, right? That got my attention very early on. And I started digging into it. I was like, there's something here. So what I did is I actually formed my nutritional plan for that year around that. So for the first 30 days once I started this journey, what I did is I ate a few ingredients. And this is not ingredients that I'm recommending other people eat, but this is what made sense for me at the moment. Somebody who's 350 pounds,
they're most likely going to die from heart failure or from, multitude of things because of their weight. So I just full sent it, and I ate 70% of my calories during that first month came from saturated fat. So I ate ribeye, bacon, butter, and Himalayan salt. Pretty much that was my diet. The first 6 months of my journey, it's fascinating when people look at my photos. I actually did not do any exercise because I was still in a lot of pain, not just physical pain, but a lot of emotional pain.
For sure.
I couldn't get myself to a gym. I'm just figuring life and my health out of the, just from scratch again, right? So mostly my entire transformation, or the early component of it, was done based on nutrition and therapy, where I had to make a conscious decision that I am putting this behind me, because I had tried numerous times in that decade and a half on how do I get myself better. It didn't work. But this time it was a very conscious decision that I'm going to take control of this. So that meant that I had to do self-development work, and I had to work with professional psychosomatic therapists to let go of my old trauma because it was being stored in my body. So that was a very big component of it. So nutrition and psychosomatic therapy, which came in multiple different forms.
I just want to make a comment. I definitely resonate with the not being able to even just get motivated and getting to the gym. I definitely have dealt with periods of depression in my life, and I think a lot of people can resonate with the fact that you just don't want to do anything, right? And so, it's amazing to hear this health journey, and you were doing the things that physically needed to go through it, but it's like understanding there's also this deep emotional part of it. You had probably felt like you'd been getting your body abused, that people had been taking advantage of you for years, and you were still working through all of that. And so there was steps to the process. And I think just understanding my own journey that, when it comes to healing and whatever you're going through in life, it's non-linear, and you take one piece at a time. And a lot of times it's just whatever you have the space and the capacity to handle at that moment. And so good for you to work through it one piece at a time, and just understanding you were doing what you needed at that moment.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Joe. And the little tidbits that you had already shared with me offline about your journey, I'm under a strong belief that you very well understand kind of a lot of what my process was. And I do see evolution of medicine going in the direction where the providers are operating in a multimodal approach, not just giving you a medication, but also helping you integrate it, right? And what does it mean to take it, educating you at a different level. So things are moving, I feel like, in a right direction.
Yeah, 100%.
All in all, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when you were telling me about how the doctors, they want to give you one medication to solve one problem, but you read all these medications and they have 20 different side effects, and it's sure, you solved one issue, but you made 20 other issues. And just hearing you, I get anxiety thinking about the amount of medications you were probably on at that time, because they were going down a line of solving one thing after another, but it was just causing, I see this Venn diagram in my mind of all the side effects that it was potentially causing in your body, and you were probably I would assume that you were in a state of stress and anxiety all the time, and you just weren't barely able to function. That's why you got to the way you were.
No, that's exactly what happened. I think at one point I did what really lit the bulb in my head. I was on 16 medications. I felt like I was a walking pharmacy. And this is not a unique story to me. There are hundreds of thousands of people that went through this process, and a lot of them just did not end up in a position where I can publicly talk about it, right? It's very, very sad.
Dude, it's tough. I mean, I know how I felt when I've taken one painkiller after a surgery or an injury, and I'm already not able to function very well. 16 medications, I couldn't imagine just the emotional. You probably just felt like you didn't want to do anything.
Yeah. So it was challenging to get myself to still be functional. The interesting thing, I've never thought about this before, but I think it automatically ended up happening in my life. And you actually sparked this in my head right now. Because of my emotional state during that period, I believe it created this pocket of period where I could only do the things I absolutely loved to do, right?
Yeah.
Because only then would I have the motivation to do it, because otherwise I just would not. So I think that has maybe not been on top of my mind, that has led to a lot of very interesting beauty in my life, and a lot of things I'm grateful for, because I literally have only worked on the things I've absolutely had a deep amount of passion for, right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, that's what's happening now with the space I'm in.
Yeah, I think, from going to a lot of events that I have that revolve around healing work and trying to help people get out of their heads, I think from my experience and looking from the outside in, it's usually people have to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And it's sad that it has to get to that point. But the thing is, when you hit rock bottom, you then take an evaluation of your entire life. And for you, it was literally dying.
Yeah.
Right. And for most people, that's why I asked, was it a figurative death or an ego death? But like for me, I remember hitting rock bottom at one point in my life, and it was an ego death. And I just went like crazy for a second. And I was sitting there, I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? And what am I doing with my time? Like, I should really only be doing the things that make me happy and the things that actually bring me joy, because otherwise, what's the point? And it's this process that really takes people to go to the dark night of their soul and be like, okay, I'm taking evaluation. I'm really unhappy with where I'm at as a person. And I've been making choices based off of, what did my parents want, maybe what my partner wants, or just not making choices for myself, trying to make other people happy. And now I don't care anymore. I've reached an all-time low. I'm going to take back control of my life and start making decisions for myself.
Yeah, very much so. And how old were you when that happened, when you went through that process?
That happened to me about 2 or 3 years ago. And for me, when I hit that all-time low, I traveled the world, and I left the country and left for 8 months. And I just said, I need to go figure out what's best for me and just spend some time with me, myself, and I, and really just do the things that make me happy, and start from ground zero and take myself away from everyone and the expectations around me, and just do what was best for Joe. And so, yeah, that took really just getting to that point where I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just going to do what's best for me.
Wow. Oh, that's very powerful, and very interestingly, being surrounded in the world where I am, and around a lot of Joes, a lot of very successful people, and this seems to be a very common pattern, that's happening. And sometimes it's happening to people in their, early 30s, late 30s, early 40s. But there comes a time when you essentially a form of a burnout as well, where how you've been operating is just not sustainable.
Yeah.
I also really do believe that the evolution of human beings, and more specifically our world and technology, has happened at such a pace in the last few decades that human beings have not evolved for a very long time. Like, our bodies and our brains have not evolved at the pace the world and the technology has evolved.
Yeah.
So just the sheer amount of stimuli that's around us, that is going to require us some time to build systems around, right? On how do you deal with that? And, we're both old enough that I think we saw the first smartphone.
Yeah.
Now these systems are being put in place, having do not disturb, the sleep mode, all of this. But this was very overwhelming for our nervous system.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to lose yourself in all the stimuli around you, and not having systems.
Yeah, it's something that I was reflecting on the other day. I said I'm really happy the year that I was born, because I feel like I got to watch as technology evolved and changed as it went through the process, right? Like, really what we missed was like the TV and
what year were you born? Sorry.
I'm 1988.
Okay.
So I remember seeing when my parents first brought computers in, and then like we got our smartphones, then we went like step by step, but we really have watched technology just like evolve over the last 30, 40 years. And it's been a beautiful process. But yeah, it's just, as you like say it's like everything is so stimulating, and it's just racking our nervous system all day long. And it's like this, there's literally an unlimited amount of information out there. And now we have so much access to it that it's almost, you feel the weight of the burden of, there's too much. I can't handle all of this. And so it really just taking a step back and just being like, what am I going to allow into my sphere?
Yeah.
What am I going to look at? What is worthy of my time? And then filtering it even deeper is, can I trust this source? Can I respect the person that's bringing this to me? Because there's also so much bullshit, for lack of a better term, out there. And so it can feel just very, very just intense and very worrisome. And like, I feel anxious now, even just thinking about it. But then the other side is just us taking the power to say, no, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to feel into that, and I'm going to allow this into my space, and I'm going to move down these directions. But I think, it just takes going through that journey.
Yeah. And I'm born in '86, so we're around the same age. I was thinking as you were speaking, internet used to move at a pace, like the 28.8K modems or something.
Oh yeah, I remember the dial-ups.
It was the dial-ups where it would take AOL. Yeah. It would take a decent bit of time to load a web page, and very rapidly information speed. It just transformed to an area where we had to build in systems. Like you now are empowered with so much decision on what to tap in on, right?
Yeah.
So these are things that, some of the newer generations, it doesn't cross their mind. They can't wrap their head around
they can't.
that.
It's funny that you're saying this because I get pissed off when the page won't load in an instant, but I remember sitting and waiting. And it's funny too, because back then you had to make more conscious decisions because it takes so long to search or look stuff up. So it's not just like I can do 40 different options in like a minute or two. It's like, no, I had to be more conscious about what I was looking at and how I was looking at it, and because it took time and a lot more patience.
It was ceremonial.
Yeah.
Using internet in the early days was very ceremonial.
Yeah.
You got your space ready.
It was super
you
exciting.
sat in front of your CRT monitor, right? And then you like waited there for it to go through the dial-up process. And then you're like, sometimes it wouldn't connect, sometimes it would disconnect you. And then when you're not using it anymore, you say you say goodbye to it and it says goodbye back, goodbye. And then you're now done, right? Now thinking back on it, it feels like a very nice, holistic, organic container to use that. And maybe we need to bring dial-up back.
That would be a horrible thing.
Just slow some things down.
Yeah, dude, this is hilarious. I remember even being a little kid and using a typewriter to write some of my essays when I was a kid. But like, it's funny that you don't think about these things and where we are now and just how easy and quick everything is. Yeah, cool. Thanks for the reflection there.
Yeah.
So I would love to get back to the journey. So it sounds like you're weaning yourself off.
Yep.
You were going through the physical aspect, and then you were going down the emotional aspect. And through that, you take it step by step, and you basically took and regained your health.
Yes.
And then through that process, that led you to where you are today, or what were the steps like in between that and where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's worth highlighting some of the interventional modalities or other biohacking tools that I deployed during that period.
100%.
And you spoke with Awais. Awais is my brother who was on one of the previous podcasts. He's an absolute genius when it comes to health. So he was definitely one of my main partners when managing my health. And he was providing a lot of guidance and support as well.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of interventional IVs, specifically NAD, and just a lot of vitamins to like recalibrate my brain. And NAD historically has shown a lot of promising results for withdrawals. So that's one of the things I did. Nutrition was still the most critical, in my opinion. I went from being fully diabetic, like I had A1C levels of like 9. And when you're hovering in 9-10 range, for too long, you could lose a limb. So I went from that range to having normal A1C levels in less than 3 months. I mean, my doctors were astonished on how quickly I regained my health. And anybody can do that. You have to make the conscious decision and put in the work. Next, I did hormone optimization. That became one of my areas of expertise. TRT, what is the ideal dosage? How do you offset the estrogenic side effects? Do you keep your system going when you're on TRT? So I became an expert in that realm, but that was a critical component because when somebody's overweight or their body is, moving in the wrong direction and just things are out of place, like your liver's not functioning properly, your glands aren't functioning properly. One of the first things that goes down is your hormones get deeply impacted. So a lot of times in these scenarios, you need an aggressive approach, kind of like my nutrition was, right? Like I'm not recommending one should not be eating only ribeye bacon and, butter. But for me at that time made sense.
That's what you needed,
Yeah. For me at the time, exogenous hormone optimization, so taking exogenous testosterone, was very critical to get me back to the place where I left off.
So what does exogenous mean?
So exogenous means from the outside, and endogenous usually means from the inside whenever it's being referred to. So if it's exogenous testosterone, that means it's coming in a vial and you're taking it from outside, exo.
Got it.
And endogenous would be the testosterone that your body is producing.
Got it. Understood.
And the exogenous and endogenous can be applied to just about any substance that your body makes.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it when we talked about gene therapy. I'll use it there again.
Yeah. And for any of you that doesn't know, TRT stands for testosterone replacement therapy. I'm on TRT myself, and I think any male above the age of 30 should go get their levels checked and see if it's something that they can help with. But what he's talking about is there's a balancing that comes along with taking testosterone. Like, you should not just go get testosterone and inject it, because testosterone, when you do something like that, it affects your estrogen levels. It can affect your testicles and your sperm count and the way that you're producing it. And so you need to make sure that you're consulting, either if you're not a doctor or somebody who is a specialist that can help you to keep that all balanced. Because I know for me, I do the injections of the testosterone twice a week, but I also take it with anastrozole, which keeps my estrogen lower. And then I chorionic gonadoprin, which I know is
HCG.
It's for my testicles, but I'm not sure, what does that do?
Good question. What HCG does, so when you have exogenous testosterone in your body, right? So as soon as your body detects that there is testosterone already, the first thing it does is it sends a signal that, oh, hey, by the way, we don't need any more testosterone. So it's a feedback loop.
Got it.
So what it does is it shuts your production down.
Got it.
And the size of your testes is a pretty strong indicator if you're producing it or not. So that's why when people are on testosterone, if they're not usually keeping their system going, usually with Clomid or enclomiphene or HCG, these are some of the top ones, or now a peptide called gonadorelin. If you're not using one of these items, your own production halts and you notice a shrinkage in your testicle size.
Got it. So basically the chorionic gonadoprin is telling my testicles to stay on. It's like keeping the factory on. It's like, even though we're getting testosterone, keep producing testosterone, because we're keeping everything moving. And that's why, like, one of my friends recommended to go from the cream that I was doing for a while, which like stops that from happening. And then the exogenous injections are much, much more effective, but when you balance them out with other stuff. Okay, super cool. I had no idea that's what it was doing. So thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is a working with a professional in this space is highly encouraged for TRT, or HRT is another term for it. Hormone replacement therapy, and this is not limited only to men. A lot of women are on HRT as well, and for women, they're dealing with a different ratio of different hormones, right? Estradiol and testosterone. But this is a critical component. I'm glad you shed some light on it as well. And thank you for sharing your personal story that you're also on TRT. One of the patterns that's very visible is most of the males in the executive field, or in a field where a lot of like mental power is required, and you want to look good, you want to have high energy, TRT has become very, very common. And it's also worth noting that the testosterone levels for males around the world have drastically dropped in the last many decades. I mean, we are hovering at very low levels of testosterone relative to 50 years ago now. And that could be, attributed to a whole host of items, vegetable oils, AKA machine oils, to microplastics and other environmental toxins, glyphosides, just pesticides that we're exposed to.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is something I talk to with a lot of my male friends. I think as a guy, like you should go, if you're having some emotional issues, a lot of times it could be from low testosterone. And like he's pointing out, there's just so much in our current world, like what we eat, the plastics that we're consistently consuming, your cell phone that's consistently giving radio waves and making you EMFs that's making you sick, right? We're just in environments that are affecting our body in ways that we might not be able to see on the face of it. So going and getting a test and seeing where testosterone levels are is extremely important. And what I'll tell you is, like, a lot of people ask, like, what are the benefits of taking testosterone? Like, yes, of course, there's the physical benefits, and it actually did help me put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle, which was awesome, but that's not why I take it. I take it because of the cognitive benefits. If your testosterone is low, like your brain doesn't function at the same levels as when your testosterone is being properly leveled out. And so for me, the cognitive benefits outweigh anything else. And there's just like this level of confidence when you feel that your brain is functioning on the proper level. And so I recommend that you go and check it out if this is something that you might feel be low. And even if you don't feel that it's low, just go get it checked anyways and see, because we just live in a world where it's being constantly attacked by everything we're eating, by just our cell phones and just all the stuff that's around us on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, great feedback and input for people that you're giving right now. It is not part of a physical that like a yearly test that a 30-some-year-old male would take, but it is definitely something that you should add for your life to optimize. And it's not going to translate to all the time and getting on testosterone. There's ways to optimize your own production, before you make a commitment of getting on testosterone. But yeah, great. I'm glad people got a line of sight on TRT.
Yeah.
Very important subject.
100%. Yeah. And then you mentioned that you were taking like NAD injections, like, or you were doing IVs of it. Yeah. So I inject NAD every single day too. I'm just curious, I kind of done my own research, but I just want to hear from somebody who's a biochemist. What exactly does NAD do within the body? Because I know I don't want to say the name in properly, but I know it's resveratrol and NAD are like two things that are highly recommended by some of the most intelligent minds and some of the top biohackers in the world.
Yep. So NAD is an energy cofactor in the body, nicotinamide adenosine dinucleotide plus. That's what NAD is. So there's a few different ways of addressing this. There's one is to take oral precursors, like you mentioned, resveratrol, or there's like NR. There's a few different NMN. So one way to address this is take the precursors. Another way is to just replenish the NAD levels by doing an NAD injection, whether intramuscular, subcutaneous, or IVs. There's a variety of different schools of thoughts on this. I have my own school of thought. I believe I'm approaching it from a level of with a level of apathy, where I'm not married to any school of thought. I've just kind of formed my own system over the years. I have found it to be a helpful approach to replenish your system with NAD like once a month or twice a month in a form of an IV, and that very determines that is determined by your lifestyle, right? If you're exerting a lot, let's say you've been on like a travel tour, right? You may need 1 or 2 IVs a month. If you are in like your own grounds and like everything is in line, your workouts, your diet, your relationships, you're not so stressed out, then taking the precursors may just be sufficient to keep the levels topped off. And a relevant piece of information here is when you're in your 30s and 40s, you're getting, and look, I'm going to use long ranges for anything I'm talking about, because anybody that gives you a very specific number, run away from them, because it's most likely false. So in your 30s, 40s, 50s, during this period, your NAD levels are drastically dropping by maybe even up to 50% in some cases. And every decade after that, it's just getting crushed and crushed. When you're in your late age, you're operating at less than 1% of the NAD levels that you had when you were in your, youth years.
NAD, just I want to understand, it's the energy for your cells to do all of the functions that it does.
A lot of functions. I think it's involved in a huge amount of steps, for energy formation in your body.
So your cells are just doing so many different things, and you
Yes.
want to make sure that they have the energy to do it.
Yeah.
And when you use the term precursor, I guess I don't understand what does that, because I take resveratrol every day, but I also inject NAD plus every single day.
Yep.
I do it subcutaneously, about 20 mLs of it's like I don't know,
0.2.
0.2 exactly.
Yep.
And so, do I need to take the resveratrol if I'm injecting the NAD plus? Because it sounds like a precursor, I guess, from my understanding. You know what? I'm going to let you explain because I don't want to give an improper explanation.
I think you're going on the right train of thought, though. Precursor. So NAD is the actual. A precursor would be item A that you would take that would in turn make more of the actual substance that you're wanting to make, right? So there is definitely a bit of haziness that I don't want to come across very confident on the subject, and also want to voice that there is a little bit of disagreement in the space. There's not a very strong scientific consensus on what is the right approach, right? So trial and error is maybe the best option. Some people I've seen respond very, very well to taking a subcutaneous dose of NAD. Other people respond better to doing NMN. So there is a personal, unique component to it. But yes, theoretically, I can say that if you are doing well with doing the sub-Q dose of NAD, then you technically should not need resveratrol. Yeah. Or I could say that you can reduce the frequency of your injectable NAD dose and basically get by with just doing an oral supplementation of NMN, resveratrol, or other NR.
Can they hurt each other, or is that something?
I don't see at these low doses there being
really
any
causing
negative interaction
Yeah.
of any sort, or you overshooting your. Also, maybe a good idea, and this applies actually to TRT as well. There's a body, we were not designed to inject every day, right? So even when we're doing TRT, 1 or 2 injections a week, that's a literal pain in the ass, excuse my language. And you develop scar tissue. So it is always a very good idea to pulse things on and off, cycle things, take a break. So, you've done TRT for 2 years. Now maybe it's a good idea to get on a cream formula for 3 months and just give do a lot of body work and roll yourself out and kind of break the scar tissue down, right? So the same kind of theory and formula or approach can be applied to NAD as well, that do your injectable top off every now and then, but try a lesser invasive method of delivery, which would be the oral. Or now actually what I would recommend for you is I don't want to name drop the company, and I also don't actually remember, but there's an NAD patch, and it's very similar to actually doing an IV of NAD. And it's very convenient. You just put the patch on for 8 hours and just delivers into your bloodstream.
How interesting. Cool. All right. So getting back to your journey. So you basically were putting all of these different modalities to help you wean off of everything and to get your health back into control. And what else would you like to share about that journey?
Yeah. Other things that I looped in were, peptides. I worked with a variety of peptides. Ultimately, when I zoom out of it, what ended up happening is that any of these things that I was using for myself, the ones that I was very passionate about, the ones that were most effective, they ended up in one way or another becoming a business of mine. I ended up getting involved as an entrepreneur level in all those spaces. So peptides was one of them. And then down the road, it's very recent development and the regulation is also very hazy around stem cells, got very familiar and learned about that space a great deal. And we can fast forward a little bit further to gene therapy, and then that became a very deep passion of mine. And if I may give you a distillation of my perspective of the hierarchy of some of these things that we're talking about, just so people and yourself can have a vision in their mind, almost a diagram on what it looks like. So I think there's a lot of consensus around this too. This is not unique to me. I didn't form it. But there's your nutrition, and nutrition, exercise, and sleep is like your very core health triangle. If you can nail your food, exercise, and sleep, you have, you're 80-90% complete, let's say, right? If you can dial those three things in. Once you are attempting to dial them in or have them dialed in, the next thing you tap in is supplementation. And that's, over-the-counter supplementation, things that are readily available. Once you dial that in, right, the next thing you go to is IVs or injectable supplementation, and that can come in form of vitamins, NADs, and peptides. Once you've tackled that area, right, then in parallel, you can do things like EBU, the blood filtration, ozone, other forms of ozone like 10-pass ozone, variety of those modalities exist in the market. Once you've tackled that, then, you become comfortable and you're in a space where you're like, okay, inflammation has dropped. I have this injury, that injury. I want to heal that, or I want to optimize. Then you start looking into exosomes and stem cells. And that's a challenging area right now because very cutting edge regulation is, it's not all the way complete and fully readily available in the US. For some treatments, topical and certain injuries, some people in the U.S. will have access to it, but most likely people are leaving the country and traveling to Colombia, Honduras, Mexico to get these treatments. And then beyond this now is probably my favorite. I mean, I'm biased. I'm with the company and a huge fan of this product is gene therapy. So that's the hierarchy: nutrition, exercise, sleep, supplementation, peptides, IVs of varieties, and then stem cells. And then boom, at the end, you got gene therapy, which I'm super excited to talk to you about.
Yeah. I mean, also just listening to that hierarchy, you don't know me as that well, but you just, in my mind, took me through my journey, and that's literally the journey that I went on, and that's how I got. Like I've done in that order, like getting my sleep, my nutrition, my health in one place, and then going to supplements, and then I was like, okay, well, I feel like I've kind of like topped out here, and then it led me to like peptides and like understanding what was there, and then I was like, okay, I feel like I have my health and everything in control, and then I've been dealing with shoulder injuries for years, and so I now have done stem cell injections and I've done the EBO treatments and all that stuff, and so it was wild to hear somebody else explain that. I never have had somebody lay it out so perfectly, so it was cool to kind of just relive that in my mind. And so gene therapy, what exactly is gene therapy and how can it help people?
Yes. Again, you're nailing it with the perfect questions. And I'm going to actually answer that in that order. So the easiest way to break this information down before we talk about the actual gene therapy products is let's talk about the technology first. So how does the gene therapy technology work? So historically, the way gene therapy was done was it was almost very individual level. Like we're going to go, you're going to a company and they're changing Joe's DNA chromosome, right? And it's a permanent change that you're making in your body. That's something that wasn't resonating with me very well. And all this information is going to get more and more clear as I describe it more. That wasn't landing with me very well.
So you're saying that there's people that can change my DNA and me being an adult today. I guess I just want to understand, when they change that DNA, so are they changing like a physical characteristic, or are they changing a function within the body? I guess I'm just trying to understand.
Both, right? So they're changing a part of your DNA that is going to, hopefully with an intent, relate to a function in your body, right? So, but that's a permanent change, permanent edit. And this technology has been like, it's existed for quite a while. There's different countries that have been practicing this technology. I became interested in it 5-6 years ago and just started exploring the market. It didn't resonate well with me because I did not want to make a permanent edit or modification at a DNA level in my body. So about 3 years ago now, we used to have biohacking parties where we would have access. We would have a clinic, kind of underground, and we would have all these fun things there, like NAD IVs and just a variety of things, light machines, and there were nurses and therapists working on us, and you'd usually have a buy-in, right?
Yeah.
So at one of these gatherings, I met one of my now dear friends, Mac Davis. He's the founder of Minicircle, and we just started talking and we hit it off, and all the things in gene therapy that a person like myself was gravitated towards and looking for, it was perfect. Seemed like he had solved the problem. Him and his partner, Walter Patterson, now also a dear friend of mine, they had solved this problem. So the way this gene therapy technology is working is it's a DNA plasmid that has a code on it. This plasmid is injected in you. And
what is plasmid? Just means like
plasmid is a circular. No, it's a specific terms. It refers to a circular DNA molecule. Okay, that's made in a lab. Easiest way to put it. So this plasmid is injected in you. This plasmid is not. It is not doing any sort of permanent edit or modification to your DNA. It's transient in nature. So it sticks around in you for about a year and a half, and then this therapy wears off. 1 to 2 years would be more accurate, depending on the individual biochemistry.
Transient means it just sticks around. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, transient means it's not permanent.
Got it. It means it's not permanent. And so there's something about the way that you guys create it or whatever it is. Why doesn't it just get flushed out of the system immediately? Just
how it's made. What it does is when it gets injected in a specific region, it transfects the cells there. The mechanism, there's a natural mechanism in the body. It's called leaky gene transcription. That is the mechanism that is used, how your body slowly turns it off in a span of 1-2 years. So that's kind of the technological side on how is it working. And as I give more information on the other side of it, a lot of these things will start making more sense. So this technology was basically a really perfect platform for a very unique product that has existed in the longevity space for quite some time now. It's a very well-researched protein called follistatin. It's great for longevity. People, their biological age usually drops. You end up gaining more muscle, losing fat, inflammation in your body drops. One challenge with follistatin, though, if you're a test subject or a mouse in a lab, very easy to solve the problem. They'll inject you 10 times a day, or they'll attach a pump to you, so delivery becomes very, very easy. But for a consumer, follistatin was a big problem because it has a very short half-life, so you couldn't inject it once or twice a day the way you inject other things to get those benefits from it. That's what made it a very perfect launch product for this for Minicircle's DNA plasmid gene therapy delivery platform. So we're just going to put the code for FST344, aka follistatin, in there, inject you with it, and now your body is making more endogenous biological follistatin versus you having to inject exogenous follistatin, right? So because we just spoke about TRT, a very good metaphorical example I can provide here that would make a lot of sense is we actually are working on an LH plasmid for testosterone for people that are on TRT. We don't know what the timeline on it is yet because there's a lot of demand for it. People keep asking us. But essentially, if we wanted to solve the TRT problem with this gene therapy, what we would do is we would up your LH levels with this plasmid, and now your body would naturally make more testosterone, right?
Okay.
So that's how you want to look at it. So theoretically, one could take more follistatin, inject it a lot of times, and maintain that steady plasma levels. It would be pretty impossible to know what your levels are. When do you need to inject it again? How frequently is that happening, right? And also a literal pain in the ass. Like, it's going to be very hard to accomplish that. So this solves that problem. Now, TRT is still pretty convenient to take.
Give me 1 second. It's a lot of information all at once. So I just want to make sure I understand, because my thoughts are, if I don't understand, maybe other people don't understand too. Okay. So your company is essentially helping to, you're injecting something within the body. It needs to be injected, from what it sounds like, into a specific place, right? And when it is injected in the body, it is directly affecting our DNA to cause a certain reaction, or to basically respond in a specific way. And you're saying what you're injecting it with is the necessary component. Is this something that our body just naturally makes and doesn't make enough of it, and you're just giving it a higher dose so it can do that regularly? Does that sound correct?
Yes. So follistatin is something, the FSC 344 is something the body makes.
Okay.
But depending on the individual, they typically have lower levels of it. Some athletes have higher levels of it. But yes, this is something you're already making biologically.
Okay. And you're saying that you're able to inject it and it stays within the body for a couple years. And so it is not basically rewriting the script of our DNA, which is a different type of gene therapy, which you said that you don't like to do. You're basically, from what I understand, it sounds almost similar to peptides almost, where it's causing the reaction within the body to have a certain effect. And it's more like putting a peptide or, a supplement in there to cause a certain reaction. So maybe even like the word gene therapy, I guess, why would it still fall under the terms gene therapy when it sounds like it's more a supplement or a peptide?
Yeah, no, great question. And I like how you gave the breakdown on the script, So it would still fall under gene therapy because we're not changing the script. What we're actually doing is adding a script, right? So we just added a script to your body. And also we can target, in the future, we'll definitely be making targeted gene therapies that would get injected in certain body parts to heal, like, let's say if we're going to target the kidneys or whatnot, right? But this follistatin gene therapy is injected subcutaneously just on your abdomen, a tiny little, very similar injections to what you're used to of taking already, right? With the peptides, just like...
Yeah, the tiny little needle.
Yeah, tiny little insulin needle in a small little volume. And that's the essence of it. But we're adding the script to your body now. That's beautifully said, and that is actually how we describe it as well. So this is adding a script to make more follistatin now.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's at the base level.
Yeah, you're not changing our code. You're just adding onto the code.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a temporary add-on.
Yes.
Is it potentially something that you guys are working towards that it could last for 5-10 years, or is it like you guys want people coming back, or is it just that you haven't figured out a way to do it to make it last more than a year or two yet?
This is actually also very tied into the safety component of it as well. We really, we don't know about the future yet on what our plans may be on how we're going to evolve with the market. But 1-2 year period is very appetizing for a lot of people. It keeps the cost down. It also gives you a lot of luxury, right? You do something, it's out of you in 1 to 2 years. If you want to repeat it, you can do it. So the timing of it has ended up working out very well for us, because going to a clinic to get this gene therapy in form of one injection every 1 to 2 years seems pretty reasonable, right? Then back in the day when they were doing TRT clinics, a lot of the doctors had you come into their office to give you an injection, right? So, shifting that to once a year, once every 2 years seems pretty reasonable. I could potentially see some research and development happening where we're making it last, longer. Yeah. But at the moment, we're very content with the timeline.
No,
it's being perceived very well.
No, 100%. It's not that it doesn't seem reasonable whatsoever. I'm just like saying, like, for somebody like me, if I understand the science, I understand the benefits from this medication. Could there be an option where you created something that lasted 5 years, so I just don't have to come in, or maybe potentially something 10 years? Like, I guess I'm trying to understand on the scientific side of it, is it possible to create something that can last 5-10 years, or is it just because of the transient nature of it, it only lasts a couple years and that's why it needs to stay the way that it is? Maybe the doses are too high and it would make things not function the right way. So I'm just trying to understand that.
Yeah, I think this is something that can be addressed and formed, and the way talk a little bit more about the company too, I think that will also shed some light. You know, the company has grown exponentially in the last, I would say, 1 to 2 years. We've gotten a lot of attraction from, I can't reveal client names. I can only talk about some of the clients that openly talk about it, like Brian Johnson, Ben Greenfield. So a lot of the biohacking folks have really enjoyed doing the therapy. They went through their own vetting process with us. And the company kind of, you know, got a lot of attention. So our resources were constantly adding to our resource reservoir to be able to tackle on more and more projects. Yes. So this is something we haven't talked about that much in depth yet, but this is something that's probably solvable. That if it's high up on our list, that we could probably address.
Got it. So it's not something that you guys have addressed yet. Okay, got it. Cool. But I'm sure that maybe it's something that could be done in the future. How cool. Yeah, and got it. And so is there a reason that you focus just on folostat? How do you say it one more time?
Follistatin.
Folostat. Is there a reason that you guys focus just on follistatin?
Yeah, so a good question again. Follistatin was perfect. It's our launch product, right? We use this to launch our platform, and it's the first product in our platform. And how you want to actually, Walter, our chief science officer and our president, founder of the company, he put it very well. You're basically, this is like inventing a book or a CD-ROM, right? Now you have once you develop this technology, you can put anything on. We can write any script we want now, right? So follistatin was just perfect because it was an item of a lot of interest in the longevity community by researchers and consumers, but there was just no real way of consuming it, right? Because of the short half-life. So now that we have accomplished follistatin, the next product that we are working on is Clotho, and we want to work on LH. So we have a pretty massive pipeline, which we're going to reveal the information, because once we reveal a piece of information we're working on it, we just get blown up by it, right? By community and the interest from people. So we have a pretty hefty pipeline of products that we are working on. A lot of them, follistatin was very centered around optimization largely, but a lot of the items that we are working on will also be for interventional purposes. Like one area where follistatin has shown to be interventional, and by that what I mean is optimization is somebody like why you would do follistatin.
Yeah.
Interventional would be, I would say, if somebody is struggling from muscular dystrophy of sorts, right? And there's different forms of it. They would do follistatin because it's muscle sparing, right? And I can also get a little bit into the benefits of follistatin if you have any questions or thoughts.
I wanna definitely get into them. I guess I'm just having some thoughts, when you're saying all this. So you're able to do follistatin now, but essentially, I inject all these peptides and taking all these medications because I'm looking for certain triggers in the body and my body to respond a certain way. So what it sounds like, we're going towards a future where they can inject these gene therapy add-on scripts where I don't have to do these peptides every single day. I go in once every couple years, and, to be transient, the costs sound pretty similar to what I'm spending on a yearly basis for these injections anyways. I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars a year on this stuff. And I remember you mentioned the price is tens of thousands of dollars for your treatment. And so I could just go in once every couple years. I get 4 or 5 shots that seem to trigger all the responses that I'm looking to get within the body. And then I'm good and I don't have to do a daily injection.
Joe, thank you so much for saying that, because the fact that you landed on that conclusion basically means that I did my job correctly on communicating that. But that's the essence. You got it. Do you need a break?
No, I don't need a break.
Joe, some water.
That's just fucking awesome. It's not even that I need a break. You kind of just broke my brain for a second. It's like the future has arrived.
The future has arrived.
So sick.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I don't need a break. I'm super excited about it because I literally had a friend visiting the other night and she's looking at my stack of all the things I take every day.
Yeah.
And I just won't need that anymore because we'll be able to just help the body perform more optimally just by adding scripts to our script that's already there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a cool way of viewing this is the way I'm looking at it is if there's something you are injecting, you can get away with injecting once or twice
Yeah.
a month, maybe even 4 times a month, like testosterone. That's relatively manageable.
Yeah.
But there are other things that are good for you that, you have to inject once or twice a day that are really worth putting in this delivery platform that like ease. And also you got to keep in mind, every time you're doing and consuming a compound exogenously and in a injectable form, each time you are at the mercy of the manufacturer and the QC QA team to make sure it's clean, nothing got leaked in, how you are each time reconstituting with the backstat water. Are you damaging some of the peptide in the process, protein in the process, right? So each time you do that, let's say all that is good. Every time you inject yourself, you got to clean the skin. Sometimes a dirty particle gets there. So there's a constant risk, right? And so when you do the cost analysis comparison with doing a gene therapy for $25K versus spending equal, a little bit less, a little bit more in doing all these injections on a daily basis, it's a no-brainer. And a thing worth highlighting for Minicircle is one of the biggest problems we also solved is some of the innovation around manufacturing. We can produce this therapy. This is 10x lower. The $25,000 mark is 10x lower than the next gene therapy that's available in the market. So we do take a lot of pride in being able to
price-wise.
Price-wise as well. That this is, even though to some people 25,000 seems like out of reach, as firsthand consumer of this, that it's within the range.
100% within the range. I mean, I don't understand the cost of like manufacturing and stuff, but just where we are in technology, I do understand that, because you want to make sure you're getting the highest quality stuff. You want to make sure that you have a COA with everything you're receiving, that it's FDA approved. And, not saying that everything FDA approved is the best, but when it comes to stuff that I'm injecting in my body, I want to make sure it's gone through the proper regulations, and so it's being done right. Before, like with that sidebar, I want to go back to some thoughts that I had before. So my question is, with these gene therapies, just my understanding of science, it doesn't seem like there would be side effects from this, because you're essentially just adding a script to tell your body to do what it does, just more of it. So I guess my question is, have you seen any side effects that can occur, or does your body just know when not to do too much of this? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. That question makes perfect sense. We are a very transparent company. We're a young group of scientists and business developers who've come together. So we communicate very clearly and openly with people where we are at in the company. So I'm happy to disclose any of the side effects that we have seen. So the transient nature on how this plasmid is working, right, that does add to the safety component of it, because it's just in and out of your body relatively quickly within 1 to 2 years, right? So having like knowing what it's doing to you, like if it was a permanent gene edit or modification, 40 years from now, that doesn't even, that's not valuable here, right? So it's safe from that side. Now, as far as each product goes, so when you're asking the safety question or side effect questions, I would advise you ask the question for each product individually now. Like follistatin, what are the side effects of follistatin? Yeah, of course,
and I guess you guys only have one product now, so I'm just referring in regards to that one.
Yes. So for follistatin, the one effect we saw on our research study was 50% of the people saw an LDL increase. And the LDL is one of your cholesterols, lipids in the body, that we saw the increase to be 10 milligrams per deciliter. Which is a pretty small number. It may not even register on a lot of the functional medicine space, because it's not a number. If somebody is in danger zone of having high cholesterol, if their levels drop by 10 milligrams per deciliter, it doesn't put them into safe zone. And if somebody's in safe zone of lipid, their lipid levels, upping it by 10 milligrams per deciliter also does not move them into danger zone, right?
Let me ask a question so I can understand it better. So let's say on a scale of 100, like 0 to 100, like how much is it moving it on that percentage? Like in let's say that the healthy range would be 100%, like how much is it affecting it potentially in a worst case scenario?
I don't know if I can answer that question accurately with the percentage number, but very marginal.
You're saying it's very insignificant.
Yeah.
Got it. So the only side effect that you've seen is it's raising your cholesterol levels, the LDL levels, which is not exactly a horrible thing.
Yeah.
And it is an insignificant amount. And so really there is no major side effects that you've seen.
Yeah. And these terms are non-scientists use insignificant or statistically insignificant very loosely. For us, we just want to tell you accurately.
Yeah, you want to give me accurate information.
Per deciliter
and of
is
course,
the number. Yeah.
This is my interpretation and from my understanding of how cholesterol and everything works within the body, where it like, I guess if I just want to clarify that I'm understanding, it seems that it's not really doing anything that would cause any major issues. And I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm trying to compare it to like drugs, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's like, okay, sure, you can do this and you might have a little bit of a rise in cholesterol, or you can take this medication that causes you to have diarrhea, bloating, headaches, your liver function fails and your kidney fails. I'm just saying that this is rad that it's so little in comparison, and really it's an insignificant risk, and it doesn't even seem like it's a real risk in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I like how you're making this information more accessible for people, not just information accessible, but breaking it down in a way. And, it's also worth noting for us, this piece of information I'm going to share with you, it doesn't fall under scientifically sound information, but for consumers, people like yourself and other consumers that are listening, it is a relevant piece of information. Even as a scientist, for me, it was relevant. Our company has gotten a great deal of consumer trust because the likes of Brian Johnson, Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, who have a pretty deep vetting process to make sure. I mean, Brian has a team of doctors that, make sure that they vet the things that go in his body, right? And I think Brian would be fine. He's a dear friend of ours, we love him and he promotes our company a lot too. These people who are the leaders in this space, they vet very diligently before they do some of these things. And we went through the process and people have had great results with no side effects. So that has bought us a lot of leverage and consumer trust, which is, worth noting here very transparently.
No, 100%. And I know who Brian Johnson is. I actually take his products daily.
Yeah.
God bless him. I don't know how, he's a very rigid lifestyle, but it gives him the physical and the emotional benefits that he's looking for. I guess different strokes for different folks, and that's not the life that I'm looking for, but I respect that he's taking it very seriously to be this experiment and to optimize in the most efficient way possible. And not only is he feeling better, but he's able to show people, I guess, yes, you can live the way that he lives, and you could be this person and not do a lot of things and go to bed exactly at this time, wake up at this time, and sure, you'll have those benefits, but also it's like that's the far extreme. Yeah. And so it's like you can also just take what you want from it, and he's giving you a good measuring post of what the most extreme looks like, and then you can take steps back from there.
Yeah, well put. One of our inside jokes in our biohacking sphere is, there's two kinds of biohackers. One is the don't die Brian Johnson type, right? No sun exposure. You live your life in a very structured, boxy kind of a way, right? Yeah. And the other side is like the debaucherous biohackers who are basically biohacking to be able to have more funds that would typically cause them setbacks, but now they do all these things. I'm an avid pickleball junkie. It's one of my favorite activities in life. I love playing pickleball. It centers me. It's how I decompress. It's it's amazing for me, and I'm a big promoter of it too. And for me, I do biohacks and I stay on track so I can play more of it, so I can recover better. And you couldn't tell me to not go in the sun. Because I'd rather not live.
Yeah. I see biohacking as an enhancement, so I can do all the things that I want to do. Not like I'm not trying to live. I mean, I think it'd be a cool concept to live forever, and I'm not against it. But at the same time, it's to do all the things that make me happy, and then stay as young and beautiful and healthy as I can along the way, not to deter me from doing any of the things that make me the happiest.
Yeah, absolutely. And, between the two extremes, I think finding your balance, what is worth it for you to do, what is not, is very critical. Right? Yeah. One thing before I forget that I wanted to mention, because we were talking on the subject of side effects with follistatin.
Yeah.
It is worth noting that the one main group of people that we discourage from doing follistatin would be any woman who is pregnant, because it makes perfect sense. When the fetus is developing, you want clean house. You do not want the fetus to be developing when you have super high levels of anything in the body. You want to basically cut out your supplementation, consult with the doctor. So that's one big area of contraindication. And I want to add this is going to blow your mind. If people are not familiar with Minicircle's follistatin gene therapy, this will blow their mind too. There's a reversibility component that we have built in, and that adds to the safety profile of our product. And there's multiple ways to reverse this therapy. One way is there's a sequence built in it's called tetracycline response sequence. What that means that if for some reason you did the therapy and 2 months later you're like, I don't want it anymore, right? You could take tetracycline and it would turn it off. Let's say you're allergic to tetracycline. You can't turn it off. You can biopsy that little pea-sized area, turn it off. Let's say that's too invasive for you. You don't want to turn it off.
What does biopsy mean?
Biopsy means just cut out the little piece, like the little pea-sized area. That in your subcutaneous tissue. Let's say that's too invasive. You can inject a compound to dissolve it in that area. So multiple ways of, and I believe, and I think you're probably going to end up speaking to Mac and Walt, the founders of the company, and they can get a little bit more into the inspiration behind some of this technological development. But one thing I think I can share is there was a void in the market, that the guys, the team noticed that the safety side was missing. Like, it's a very big luxury to do a therapy that's lasting for 1 to 2 years, but now also I want to turn it off, right? Now, I'll also tell you, hundreds of people have done the therapy. 0 people have ever come back to ask to be turned off.
Yeah.
But I am a firm believer in the safety of the therapy, but it even makes me feel good that there's options, right?
Yeah.
Somebody gets pregnant. I think 10, 20 years from now, the biggest use case, this is a guess here, this is not an official opinion, is maybe, because women are doing the therapy. They're having fantastic results. My girlfriend's done it. Everybody in the company has done it. But if they end up getting pregnant, surprise, unplanned pregnancy, turn it off.
Yeah. I mean, this all makes sense to me. It's, if you're being transparent and you're letting people know the only risk is a little bit more cholesterol, then why would anybody want to turn it off? And if you could just, give us a short list of like, what are the benefits of follistatin?
Yes.
Just so people understand what it is doing in the body. And just so, I guess having that list would be very important.
Easy way to answer that question is split the benefits up into two separate buckets. One bucket of benefits that you are equipped, human body and brain is equipped to gauge. And the other bucket that you really can't gauge and you need to do a test for. So let's talk about that bucket first. Those are the longevity benefits. You are not going to feel your biological age dropping or your telomeres elongating, but that is the biggest draw.
What are telomeres?
Telomeres is this last part on your like the end on your chromosomes that, the theories are that as you age, this part gets shorter and shorter, right? So it's basically kind of determining when you're going to die, essentially.
Okay. I didn't know this.
Yeah, elongating that, you're adding some lifespan. This is some studies around it. Some of it is theoretical level. And the science around this for testing and application is being formed more and more as time progresses.
Got it.
So the longevity benefits, what we saw was an average of 10 years drop in biological age. Are you familiar with biological age versus chronological age?
I actually would like to go into detail about what this is because I understand it at high level, but I just want to understand how do I measure that and what am I looking at? Is it basically just showing general studies of this is what a healthy 20-year-old looks like and comparing it to where you are now, or how do we tell those biomarkers?
Yeah, the easiest way to answer this question without getting so complicated is there's a few different companies that are doing these age clock tests, right? Most of them are measuring, your liver's age, your brain age, your heart age, your biological age, which is a separate component. What they're doing is they're measuring a variety of items in your body, and they have unique algorithms that they're running to assess where you would normally be and where you are right now. So that's the essence of it. Variety of biomarkers, and then using algorithms to do this assessment.
Got it.
And the company that we worked with was True Diagnostics. He's a friend of ours. It's called a True Age Test. So on this test, we saw a 10-year drop in age. Again, it's a range anywhere from 2 to 16 years. People in the middle age group in their 50s saw a 10-year decline. The youngest person to do the therapy was 23 years old. They saw two. So the younger people saw lesser, makes sense. The older people in their 60s, 70s, 80s saw, upwards of 12, 14, 16-year biological age drop.
But also, from my understanding of science, the most optimal functions of the body typically are going to be around the 18 to 20-year-old mark, right? So that's when everything is producing at the highest. It's working at its most optimal function. So if somebody's 23, of course, they're only going to lose a couple of years because there's only a couple years to go back to. So that's why I guess I asked that question, is understanding the data is trying to compare it to where is the most optimal human function, which is going to be in that 18 to 20-year-old range, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So that kind of addresses the first bucket, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to add a few more benefits in the bucket one afterwards.
Yeah. But you're saying follistatin affects that many functions, just this one injection?
Just this one injection impacts that many functions, and we haven't even gotten to some of the other important functions. And each one, we're all on our own journey. Each person is gravitated towards a different set of functions based on their own needs.
Got it. But I guess even with your answer that you've given us so far, it sounds like it's overall affecting many things, but I feel like you haven't even told me what specifically it's doing.
Yeah, what it's specifically doing, it's going to get tied into bucket two. Specifically, it's lowering the activin and myostatin in your body via myostatin and activin inhibition. What does that translate into? It's muscle sparing, so you end up gaining more muscle, okay? Because of the way this is working, you're not going to get bodybuilder jacked, right? It doesn't push you beyond a cap and you still have to put in the work. So muscle gain, fat loss are very common effects of it. A lot of people will notice an energy boost as well from it. Reduction in inflammation is a very big benefit very big, and for me personally, a critical benefit because I've gone through some surgeries and quite a bit of injuries. It's also a really fun benefit to talk about because now we know, and most people who care about their health are very familiar, that inflammation is the root cause or one of the root causes of a lot of challenges people are dealing with, right? So follistatin lowers your inflammation in the body, and that can have some interesting positive effects that are not even directly correlated to follistatin. And a couple of these I ran into even myself and, people in my vicinity, like my girlfriend, when she did hers, she had the same positive effects. So you're able to talk about them in more detail and just observe at a different level when everybody around you is doing it. One of these benefits was a cognitive boost that we experience, reduction in brain fog in the morning specifically, because a lot of this brain fog is coming from inflammation in the brain, from viruses, from environmental factors, from toxins in food, whatnot. And after doing FST, I felt a boost there and just higher mental clarity. Now, we can't promise an individual that you're going to do follistatin and you're going to get a cognitive boost.
But how is it reducing the inflammation?
Yeah, so the two main things in the body that it's inhibiting, one is myostatin and activin. Activin is responsible for a lot of inflammation in the body.
Okay.
Down the chain. So if you can just lower the amount of activin in the body, you can lower a lot of the inflammation in the body.
Got it. And what is activin doing exactly?
Activin and myostatin are involved in quite a bit of reactions.
Okay.
Like activin, one reaction, inflammation. This is a long metabolic pathway in the body.
Okay.
That can get very scientific. And myostatin is very tied to, your muscles and fat loss.
Okay, got it. And so basically activin and myostatin, those are the two terms. They are responsible for functions in the body that are basically functions that are being overdone or maybe not done enough.
Yeah.
And so it's inhibiting them.
Yeah.
And so these are something that's happening regularly within the body all the time.
Yes.
And so by slowing down the activin and the myostatin, because it doesn't seem like they have, do they have benefits, or are these mostly released as negative things?
You don't want to shut anything off. This is my school of thought.
Entirely.
Anything off entirely.
Of course.
And with how Minicircle's follistatin works is it doesn't knock off myostatin or activin entirely. In fact, there are definitely people that are going to do research on follistatin, and when people are typing follistatin into Google or another search engine, what they're going to stumble upon are some of these mice. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of like this bull that's fully jacked, or like a pit bull that's like really muscular. Those were some of the studies that were done where they completely knocked out the myostatin. Right?
Got it.
So, yeah.
Got it. So you're lowering this activin and myostatin from being developed through the follistatin.
Yes.
And doing that is essentially giving us muscular growth. It's helping to cause fat loss. But most importantly, what I heard is I understand that on a deep level, inflammation is the root of much disease in the body in general. And so our bodies are typically in inflammatory states due to our psyche and due to just emotional stress and just daily stimulus. Just even looking at your phone, they show studies showing that it causes inflammation. And you're saying that by slowing down the myostatin and the activin, it's actually reducing inflammation in the body overall. And so we're having a myriad of different benefits, which are including cognitive function. Obviously, all your organs are going to work better. I guess I don't like using the word obviously, but your organs are going to work better. Your blood flow is going to be better. You're just going to be clear-headed. You're going to be in a better mood because you're not as inflamed. And so there's just really health benefits across the board. And these health benefits across the board are then resulting in our biological age reducing significantly because now the functions in our body are working even better and we're able to reverse that age.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it is worth noting that because there is an individual component to it. There's people that will do the gene therapy, and like we've had some hyper responders, people that within one day report that I feel different. I have more energy. There's also people all the way, both are rare groups, that 3 months pass by and they're like, I'm starting to feel, I think something is different now, right?
Yeah.
But most people are in more like the average zone where 2 to 6 weeks they start feeling it. But why I'm bringing that up is our unique individualism, our unique biochemistry, right? That is dictating in many ways the uniqueness of not just the effects at a physical level, but also the perception of the effects. Because some of for example, there's individuals who are very calm who tend to notice more. The same body with a different headspace, mindset, somebody who's in a lot more sympathetic fight or flight would be getting the same benefits, but they are just unable to perceive them, right? Yeah. So the two really fun, like the ways we recommend people gauge their benefits for both of those buckets is one is very easy. A DEXA scan you can get to measure your body composition. It's like a 10-minute scan. You can go to a facility. You have one near here, I believe.
Yeah.
You go, you get your body composition measured. It'll tell you how much muscle fat you have in what part. It'll give you a diagram and numbers for each of your sections, right? So you can track your performance at a physical level.
Yeah.
And the other one, you can do a biological age test to see how you're moving the needle there.
Have you ever given this to anybody and they had no effects?
I believe there has been at least 1 or 2 cases out of maybe close to 500 now, where one person came back and reported no effect.
Got it. And they reported no effect.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it, going through the journey that I went through in health, I almost said hell, but kind of that too,
But I'm wondering also if that person's mind was the blocker to allow it to happen.
Yeah, it's there could be a lot of variables there, and I don't want to talk about that unique case too much in depth.
Of course, yeah.
But I'm looking at it as that even if you're less than 1%, that's negligible. There's health is such a complicated area that so many things are happening. There could be so many reasons and so many outliers, right?
I mean, I guess what comes to mind for me is like placebo effect, right? And like, it's funny. The more expensive a treatment it is, the more I believe it's going to work, because money is a translation of time and energy.
Yep.
And so that means I'm putting that much time and belief into this happening, which is a good thing. And like believing it's actually going to work. And so, a big part of it is the mind, because your mind controls everything.
Yep.
And if you take something and you're completely skeptic and you're in a negative mindset and you just don't believe you're going to get better, and you won't get better and you won't heal. And, even though you're adding the script in, your mind is really allowing the script to play out. And so you have to be able to allow that script to play out. And so, it's something I deal with my clients regularly. And I tell them, if you're in a dark place and you're not feeling like you're getting better and you're not looking at things with a positive outlook and understanding that things will improve, then they won't. And your pain will get worse and you will feel worse. And so a huge part of healing is the mindset journey. And, it's taking the whole body it's a whole body approach, and and understanding that no matter how many peptides, no matter how many things you take, if you're chronically depressed and you're sitting there in these states and you're not giving your mind the freedom to do what it needs to do, you're not going to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. That was also the critical point in my journey, right? Why I did some of these things and why were they now working better than they historically had worked was because of this conscious decision to let go. So I'm a pretty firm believer in the power of mind via thoughts. I'm a very, very firm believer. I lived it firsthand so many times, and I do translate a lot of it to the work that is in my realm around follistatin and gene therapy, by educating people and informing them and getting them on board and just fully well versed in what are the phases of the effects that look like, what are the nuanced details around that, share some personal intimate details, and actually in the process of scaling that up right now globally for clinics around the world on how they can educate the clients that they're seeing.
Got it. Okay.
But you nailed it. It is,
we've
definitely firsthand seen the pattern that the better you educate the people and prepare the mind for specific effects, the more you can intimately dial in that information, they typically end up having better results.
Yeah. No, and this is what part of the reason that I go down these journeys. I just want to understand what's happening with my body.
Yeah.
And the more I understand what's being put into it and what are the chemical responses. And, it's one of the reasons I love Andrew Huberman. Do you listen to Huberman?
Yeah.
Huberman gives the high level explanation, and I don't understand it, but hearing it and then him giving the layman's explanation, which is usually what he does, he gives the high level and the layman's, something in my brain clicks and it goes, okay, that makes sense to me. Now I understand what's happening on the high level, and then I understand what's happening on the simple level. And that communication to my brain, when that clicks, it then allows me to basically allow it, whatever needs to happen through that treatment or through that medication or whatever the peptide is. I think it just works better when I understand what's going on in my body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of just,
believer,
instead of just trusting and being like, oh yeah, I'm a doctor, just trust me. It's like, no, I want to know what's happening. And with what we discussed earlier, we live in this digital age. You can learn. There's a video on YouTube about everything, and you should learn, and you should feel into what's best for your body, and you should feel into what's going to be good for you. And don't just take somebody's word for it. Always do your own research, and always take the time to figure out what's going to work best for you.
Yes, absolutely. Very well put.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the benefits and we've talked about the potential side effects from, so it's follistatin is the name of the drug, and then it's myostatin and
protein. Call it protein. It's a protein that exists in the body.
It's a protein that exists in the body. Yeah. Got it. Okay, I guess, and then peptides are amino acid chains, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you just put like a few amino acids together, right? It becomes a peptide.
Okay.
And you put, you make it bigger and bigger, it becomes a protein.
Got it. Yes. Okay, understood. Yes. And then when proteins come together, those just help to make...
Yeah, your muscles are your proteins. The factories in your cells that are replicating DNA, those are protein, right? So they're just a whole host of things that proteins do, peptides and proteins do.
Okay, fantastic. And so you said that you guys are at the point where you're also just, I guess at some point you're studying other proteins is what it sounds like. Yes. So you're these add-on scripts that are going to help functions in the body. And so you're researching other proteins now. And then, if there's one thing I've learned through my journey, that many peptides do a lot of the same things in different ways. And so, when you're researching these proteins and the functions they do in the body, will these benefits stack just when you're doing multiple, let's say, injectables from you guys?
Yep.
And so do you think, I guess 2 questions. Do you think that stacking the benefits ever causes too much of a problem for the body, trying to tell it to do too much? And then secondly, is it okay that these things are just going across the board and telling the body to do the same thing in different ways?
Yeah, man, once again, I'm so glad you asked that question. We are being very methodical in our approach for the selection of, for prioritization of our pipeline on selecting things that are going to very synergistically work together. Like, for example, our next therapy that's a high priority right now that is going to take the biohacking community, the longevity space by a storm is Clotho. Ups your IQ points potentially, helps regenerate, some major organs in your body, heart, liver, kidney. I won't get into too much of the science of that, but this is a product that's in our pipeline that we're working on right now, and we are overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of interest we have received from people just in form of one question. Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet?
Yeah.
The way it kind of works with us is, if you do follistatin with Minicircle, you are now part of our follistatin family, right? You're part of our Minicircle family. What happens is, this is it's a small company. We then have a relationship, or you have a relationship with the doctor. It's like a community, essentially, right? You then are looking out for anything Minicircle outputs. That what's my next gene therapy that I'm doing, right? Exactly how you nailed it, like these 5 things I'm going to do. That's what's going to end up happening. So with that, people want to do all the therapies that we're coming out with. So we are being methodical in our approach and selection on selecting very synergistic therapies that would work well together. Now, of course, we're going to have, so that would stack well together, that, would stack well together, but synergize together. There are definitely going to be one-off therapies that we down the line will have that would probably fall a lot more in the realm of intervention, meaning more like disease related, as things in the regulation develop further and further, because this is still relatively new, not new for us. We've been at it for more than a decade and a half.
Yeah.
Sorry, half a decade. And gene therapy has been around for quite some time. So not very new for us, but in the grand scheme of things, it is still very new. So regulations, that's a process we're going to have to go through in every country.
Yeah, and I mean, if anybody understands how the body works, they would understand that what you're, like, just the benefits that you listed from follistatin, that's already going to affect disease, right? So even though it's not specifically attacking a specific disease, improving functions of the entire body is always going to result in better results and your body working in a more efficient manner. And you made a comment that Clotho, that's his name. Is Clotho just like, is that the name of like
protein?
It's another name. Okay, cool. What a cool name, Klotho.
Yeah, Klotho, just for if people want to look it up.
Got it. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was thinking a C in my mind. Okay, so Klotho, you said it can raise your IQ. I guess there's two questions there. One, I'm not really sure how, I understand there's IQ tests, right? And these tests are based off of questions that supposedly measure your IQ. But how can a protein affect my IQ? Is it just affecting the cognitive function or the neurons in your brain? Yeah.
Yeah. This would be a very controversial subject to discuss because I myself am even in the school of thought that IQ is not a good way to relay intelligence. There's many forms of intelligence. One of my favorite subjects when I was in college was psychology and social cognition. So this was a hot topic of discussion during that time that IQ does not mean you're smart. There's varieties of intelligences, EQ, like the emotional intelligence. So I definitely belong to the school of thought that you can't measure it with one number.
Yeah.
This is a very reductionist way of assigning a value to something. So I will, for this conversation, shy away from the nitty-gritty details on how Klotho is actually enhancing your IQ or intelligence. But the early mice studies, that's what they showed, that they have enhanced people's processing capacity, their IQ.
See, that's more the question. I'm in the same school of thought as you that you can't measure somebody's intelligence just based off an IQ test. But when you brought up that it did raise people's IQs, I'm just asking more so, what is the function within the body that it is improving? That's what I'm questioning.
Brain. It would have to do around regeneration, repair of the brain.
Okay.
Yeah. And, when you speak, I have a strong feeling you're going to end up talking to Mac and Walter.
Yeah.
I love them. Like, absolutely some of the best innovators in this space.
Yeah.
Walt or Mac will get into the nitty-gritty detail of some of this processes. You may even speak to Ryan Rosner, one of our scientists.
Cool.
They'll get into the nitty-gritty detail at a cellular level on the calcium channels on how some of this stuff is happening.
No, and 100%. And you've done a great job of explaining the high level because I think that's important to understand the high level before you get into the nitty-gritty. Okay. And so I also did just have a question for you. You said you're a biochemist. So as a biochemist, what exactly does your day-to-day look like being a biochemist? I know you're in another role now, right? Which is not being a biochemist, but just what does it mean to be a biochemist and what exactly do you do in that position?
Good question.
Yeah.
Biochemists, so you know what biochemistry is versus chemistry or biology?
Let's assume that no one knows anything. If you could give us an explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So biochemistry is basically the study of chemistry inside a human body.
Okay.
So what it means is it could range from if you consume a carbohydrate, what is happening in your body? What is the process this carbohydrate is going through that's going to break down this complex or simple carb all the way down to a glucose molecule? And then how is a glucose going to get used up in your body? So it's basically a study of chemistry, biology, mixed but very specific to a human body. So I was always very fascinated by human bodies, especially chemistry component of it. So when you become a biochemist, you have a few different options. You go either into the industry side or either into academia side. My early interest was research around academia. So I was a researcher at UCSD. That's where
I went to UCSD.
Oh, really? What college were you in?
Yeah, I was in 6 college. We still didn't have a name at that time.
Yeah. Does it have a name now? I think it still doesn't have a name.
I think they might have named it, but yeah, we
may
were
have
6
named
college.
I went to Warren, the engineering school.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, lovely. So what year did you graduate?
I was 2010.
2000. Yeah, I was there before you.
Yeah.
I was there before you.
Yeah.
A few years before.
Yeah,
okay, cool. But lovely campus. The reason I went to UCSC is because I wanted to do research in biochemistry, subjects I was interested in. Top.
Yeah, when it comes to research and like studies, they're one of the top in the country.
Yep. Uri Hall was where I was doing research there. Cool. So, it was fascinating time. So, Yeah, you typically have two options. If you go in academia, you basically end up becoming a professor, pursuing a PhD. If you go in industry, you are entering the corporate sector. And, I didn't want both. I ended up getting a job in a pharma company right before graduating, and I didn't even collect my first paycheck. I ended up just leaving because I couldn't see myself working in a lab by myself.
Yeah.
So my career then got evolved into a lot of product development in a variety of spaces. And very quickly I learned that I'm more of an entrepreneur. So even though I'm a scientist, I'm a fraudulent scientist now because I don't actually do any more science. I just need to know enough science to be able to understand the products so I can communicate them better. But yeah, early on in my career.
Yeah, I wouldn't call yourself a fraudulent scientist. I would say you did all the hard work and you did that early in your career, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like with me, like at my firm, I don't typically handle small cases anymore because I've already done that. My knowledge is better used in other places. And so, yeah, it sounds like you basically try to, to regurgitate this again, being a biochemist, you're trying to understand how basically certain functions within the body are happening, and when you're taking things exogenously or stuff from the outside, how it is affecting the body and what are the basically the pathways that are resulting.
Yeah. These fields are also very niche fields, especially if you're a biochemist or a chemist or a physicist. You are a master in like one tiny speck of that whole field, right? My research was on RNA polymerase. The experiment that I was part of was the RNA world experiment. This is the DNA world. Before the DNA world evolved from what was known as the RNA world. So we were replicating one tiny step in this grand scheme of things in the lab. So most of these academia positions or researchers are just masters of that one little. They don't have a good idea of how the zoomed out version works that well. They're not masters of that, at least.
Understood. Okay, cool. And then, I guess I appreciate you going back so I can understand a little bit more about your experience. And so to understand just a little bit more about like when you guys are injecting this follistatin into people, like these scripts are just basically like the basic building blocks of like what a human being is. And when you're injecting and so you're just sequencing those building blocks in a specific way that's creating this follistatin, which is then a protein that is causing these effects in the body.
Exactly. You pretty much nailed it on the dot. That it's just a specific sequence that corresponds to a signal in your body that to make more follistatin, right?
Got it.
So the more scripts we learn, the more beneficial scripts, we'll put them in and launch them depending on our resources.
Got it. And so like these scripts, it's not like something that you can just look down in a microscope and read the scripts. It's through like trial and error of like combining the basic scripts, the building blocks of what it is to be a human being or what our DNA is made of.
Exactly.
And those and what is our DNA specifically made of? It's made up of proteins, or what is the basic building blocks?
It's base pairs, that's what we have, and it's just like a computer code, like a program code.
Yeah, but what are the base pairs made of, I guess?
I am so out of commission on my biochemistry. I don't even want to tackle this subject.
It's all
because
good.
I may butcher something and then I'm going to hold myself.
Somebody's going to hold you accountable to it.
I will hold myself to a very high standards.
And I respect that if it's not something that you, because sometimes
I can very easily go into it, but there's subjects that I now shy away from.
I gotcha. And it's more just me understanding on a high level, but basically you're taking the building blocks, you're figuring out the sequences, and so figuring out the sequences is done a lot through trial and error, and then you're seeing through the combinations of different sequences what it is doing within the body.
Yeah, and one valuable thing worth noting on this subject is we are not reinventing the wheel when it comes to like follistatin, for example, or even Klotho. As even I think Walt or Max said it, we are essentially standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
A lot of this research on follistatin had already existed in the market. We were very familiar from other researchers and the things that existed in the literature on the benefits of it. What we did is implemented it into our technology.
Yeah.
So we are essentially standing on shoulders of giants where we're taking some really groundbreaking work and research and things that are of high value and implementing them into our technology. And that's not an easy task, but we're also not going all the way back and doing experiments on some of these specific things to figure out is this going to be beneficial or not.
Got it. Okay, understood. But just like anything in life, you took something where it was and you've made it better.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And it's just a testament to where we are with technology that we're
better and accessible.
Better and accessible, yeah. And it's just, this is where we're at this point in our timeline, and you're taking something where it is, and this is where it's been presented to you, and now it's how can you improve upon that, and you guys did a great job of that. So I wanted to just kind of like wrap things up, and so is there anything else that you would like to tell us about Minicircle and the services that you guys provide before we wrap things up?
Yeah, Minicircle right now is available in Honduras. I don't know if I can reveal the name of a few other clinics that are in the works right now. If
they don't do it in the States?
No, not in the States yet.
Why not?
Yeah, this is a long process. The FDA, and this is actually good. I'm glad it came up now because it's worth noting. The process to get things approved in U.S. is much slower. That is something we are definitely taking on and working on, but it's much slower. Things will take upwards of half a decade to get approved and some serious funding behind it.
Jesus.
So this is the way we're tackling this is that each jurisdiction has their own requirements. I mean, EU and US are some big ones, but Mexico, Honduras, right, some of the other Latin American countries, and then on the other side of the world as well. So we're basically tackling each one independently. So it requires a lot of resources, a team for each place in getting things approved, but it's not easy to have global approval. There's no one body that manages it.
No, of course.
Globally.
As a lawyer, I understand this too. I mean, I just did a biohacking treatment down in Mexico, like I had told you, and it's because it's not approved in the U.S. yet because it takes many years and a lot of red tape. Even though there's a lot of research and studies showing that it is able to do what it can.
Yes.
But so in Honduras, and then it sounds like you're also working on multiple other locations. Yeah, got it. And you're in the process, but you can't reveal that information yet.
Yeah. One of the clinics is hopefully going to come online in a gorgeous location in the next few months that we're very, very excited about.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to shoot you a personal note.
Please
when
do.
that happens.
Yeah,
you can update.
I'm interested. I definitely would like to get one of these injections. It sounds awesome.
This is for you. It's a no-brainer, Joe.
Yeah.
I mean, you now know how it works.
Yeah, I understand how it works.
And I think you also, with how you're put together and how you participate, with your relationship with health, you are almost the ideal target. You're in the dead center of the demographic that's being gravitated towards this sort of therapies, like healthy, successful. You want to, be able to do more, live longer, and this is a great tool for that. Yeah,
I think it's the term that I would use is I just appreciate and understand this now, and through the understanding, I give it the appreciation that it deserves, and just seeing where we are going. And like I said earlier, I had my brain kind of exploded and had this aha moment. It's like, I just, the amount of work that I put into my life to like be as healthy as I am, if it was able to be simplified down to going to a clinic, hopefully in America, at some point, but even if it's nearby once every couple of years and getting everything that I need, that is a huge stress relief for me, and it just makes life so much easier. So I'm excited to see where the future is going with that.
Absolutely. Look, the long-term vision it's a no-brainer for us. Is this therapy gets approved in U.S., and this is a therapy that should have become available to the broad market for like every luxury gym like Equinox should be offering FST for like $500 or $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a very long-term vision. And there's so much that happens between this and where we're at now and then. But that's a vision for right now, right?
Yeah, I guess, I just have one question, because obviously the price point is a little bit higher than 99% of the world really to be able to afford it at this point. But the people that do they're going to be attracted to it and they're going to be gravitated. So when it comes to lowering the cost in something like this, the hope is, you will be able to just get a shot like this for $500 to $1,000. Is it just like basically the more that people start to use it, or is it the cost of creating it is so high and just the red tape that you guys have to go through? Like, what exactly factors into going in the cost?
Yes.
And then I want to ask you one last question and wrap up this podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So because I come so much from the manufacturing space and product development space, typically the cost, there's two ways the cost ends up being really high. One is if the accessibility is low, right? Then it basically ends up raising the cost because only so many people can do it. So now that sum has to be amortized over a smaller number, right?
Yeah.
So the cost ends up being higher because you have to cover your research and development costs. So that's one.
Got it.
Second, especially in this space, there is definitely something to be said about, some pieces of the manufacturing process are just more costly. We actually take a lot of pride in our manufacturing process. That's part of our IP, that we have cracked the code on it in a way that we can manufacture for a very reasonable price. So one of the things that's moving our cost up high at $25K, it's relatively very low considering the next was like $250,000, right? So with that in mind, it's low, but we do possess the capability that once this becomes a broad market product where more people will access it, we should be able to trim down the cost further. So that's,
Okay, awesome. Yeah,
that's the most accurate answer. I think the more and more people do it, and a lot of that is going to be determined by how many jurisdictions is it available in. And the largest consumer market is probably going to be the U.S.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, no, I appreciate the explanation because I always wondered what made some things so much more expensive than others, but it's just the perfect term that you used was amateurized across how many people are using it and what is the cost to the company. And they obviously still have to make a profit. There's many factors that go into this, but the fact that you also have done research that you're about 10 times, 10x less than other companies in price is quite impressive. So so I appreciate the explanation. Okay. So I like to ask this question at the end. What is one thing and the final thing that you'd like to leave our guests with, whether it's a piece of advice or just a motto that you live by, but what is something that you'd like to leave everybody with as we close this off?
Yes, I'm a very big believer in the frequency that revolves around gratitude. And this is a piece of daily practice for me. We all have flaws. We all have downfalls. We all run into trouble and problems and just face a lot of stressors. And I find it so tremendously beneficial to just shift my headspace by just thinking about gratitude. And, I want to express a deep amount of gratitude to actually Minicircle, to Mac and Walter and the rest of my team that they developed something so amazing and unique that it's opening up a lot of these platforms. I want to express gratitude to you right now for hosting me and giving us this platform to communicate. And I would express some gratitude to myself for going through the journey that I went through to be able to end up here to hopefully inspire and educate and impact people. So gratitude.
Dude, hell yeah. And thank you so much for teaching me so much. Like, it's like a podcast like this, not a lot of podcasts do I learn a bunch of new stuff, but today you answered a lot of questions of things and topics that I've been interested in for a while. And I understood high level what they were, but to have a biochemist explain them in detail was very beneficial to me. So I can't express enough gratitude to you giving me those details. And what I want to end everything off of is, how can people find you? How can people reach you? Where should they go to? Is there a website? And you can talk to the camera and let them know where they should reach out and how they can get in contact with you if they have questions.
Yes, the name of the company is Minicircle.
Okay.
Minicircle.clinic. That's the domain.
Okay.
Yep. But if you forget the .clinic or .io, just Minicircle, and you will find us.
Okay, cool. And we'll have this, of course, in the show notes for anybody that's looking for you. And other than that, dude, this was awesome. I appreciate your time. I have so much gratitude for you.
Thank you so much.
You and your brother, what an amazing family of healers. And this is rad. And it's so cool that you guys get to play back and forth down that realm together. So thank you again for your time, my friend. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening in. We'll see you next time.